You said earlier that if someone can have this crisis, sort of the dark night of the soul in their 20s, that's great, and then maybe move up from there. But for everyone, that doesn't always happen. So what if someone's in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, and they have this sort of breakdown and they've realized they've never really been self-aware? There's still time. What would you tell them? Because now, of course, they're expected to pull it together and be part of society, and you can't flounder and be moody as a middle-aged person. But what would you tell them? Everybody has a starting point.
Well, I think if there's, obviously our situations are all unique, but one of the things I had to admit was that I didn't really have the solution. I think there's a strong culture in the Western world of, I did it my way, the strength is within you, and but I actually had to say to myself, I had to find another way of living daily life, these spiritual principles, and to do that though, it takes a certain amount of honesty. It takes, in fact, a gut level degree of self-honesty to really be willing to do that. And I think it's a sacrifice, it's to make that, so it's like, okay, if you're in your 40s and you've spent 40 years developing your habits, implanting your neural brain, your neural brain pathways, that they're not fixed, but they're pretty well run in. It's going to be hard for you to break out of those habits, and frankly, you may not be able to do it with the way that you have always done things. It's like, that old picking things up by the bootstraps. The brain can't sort out the brain. I had to come up with new habits, new ways of doing things. They were different to the way I saw the world. They jarred with me. They contradicted a lot of things that I believe to be true about the world. What I'm saying is that willingness to take on a new way of doing things was so important. As long as I couldn't magically, and the brain is not a computer. I used to think for years the brain's a computer. It's not. The brain is just a very complicated heart. It's an emotional, it's a huge emotional thing with this little layer of rationality on top that's totally at mercy from any emotions that are strong enough. And that 4 decades of emotions and emotional habits cannot be suddenly come over by this tiny little bit of rational mind. For me, I had to find a new way of approaching the fundamental issues of life. And I had to be willing to do that, and that willingness was key, I think. And it can seem like a destruction of self, but the thing is, if that self's failed, what are you going to do? How do you serve it? The self cannot service the self. Like servicing a car. The self cannot service the self. You need to bring in something else, and that's what I had to do. Well, I had to. It wasn't like some big insight. Oh, look, I'm ready to change. It was, I had to. I felt I had no choice but to try a different way.
So self-awareness, you think, is really important, especially to propel someone to their next level? Because if things are still so status quo, then nothing's really ever going to be... I'm sorry, I'm not even sure where I'm going.
The thing is, we have so many... I don't know if this is just, but the papers love to tell stories about successful people who screw up. So does that give a false image that you can be successful and screw up? I think it might do. Maybe there are people who are just so talented or so lucky that they can screw up repeatedly but still have some success. I'm not one of those people. I mean, I'm not even anywhere near that level, but what I mean is I'm not one of those people who can have any level of success if I don't deal with my own flaws and don't have some self-awareness. So I think there's like, if you're like me and you're watching this, then you can't be like Britney Spears. I keep on using her as an example, who can shave her head and go crazy and still then have a successful music career afterwards. That wouldn't, with me, I can't shave my head, I can't go crazy. I just have to keep on trying to develop personally, develop professionally, and see what happens next.